Growing up in Munford, Alabama, I was the first person in my family to graduate from college. So I'm not saying that to brag, I'm saying that to kind of get into the story that I want to tell you about. It was just a different situation there. It's a really small place. There are a lot of good people there. But it was almost like it's a place that we didn't know how to escape, if that makes sense. There were some guys there, some girls who were tremendous athletes who, over the years, being 22, 23 years this side of high school, I look back on it and I've seen tons and tons of athletes since then. And these guys and girls could have played Division I sports, but they didn't know how. They didn't know how to get their game tapes into the right hands. See, the idea was that we didn't have enough staff, we didn't have enough people there to encourage us. Hey, this is what you can do to get into junior college. This is what you can do to get into a larger school. And this is what you need to do to kind of have a life plan if you're going to go to college. So I know over the years, as many of you have heard me preach, you understand that I have a very strong opinion on educators in both senses. The reason for that is because I had a lot of educators who had gotten out, who had gone and done some things with their lives, who had gotten a degree. And those people came into our school and spent their 25 or 30 years there and did nothing to influence the hundreds and hundreds of kids who came through their classrooms over the years. That frustrates me. As a matter of fact, it disgusts me because how can you do that with your life? On the opposite side of that, I've got 6 or 7 that I put on a pedestal because they were coming through the same situation, dealing with the same kids, the same community, but they said, okay, I'm going to do what I can to make a difference in your life. I'm going to do what I can to give you information that's going to help you be a better person. Above all of those in my life is Mike Patterson. I've got a picture of him here. This is just a Braves game a couple of years ago. Coach Patterson was one of those guys that had a tremendous influence on my life and my brother's life. As a matter of fact, he still has a wonderful influence on our life. His birthday is this week. I'll be able to call him, talk to him a little bit, share some time on the phone with him. My brother and I try to go to a baseball game with him every year just to spend time with him because as we have grown older, he's one of those guys that didn't just say, okay, I want to take these first 4 or 5 years I have and where I can be involved in your life and take advantage of them and then I'm going to be through with you. He's been that guy that's been influential even as we've grown into adulthood. But Coach Patterson was a guy who was different. There are a lot of kids coming through the hallways there at Munford High School and people will say, hey, you're never going to amount to anything. You're not going to be anything in life. Coach Patterson was different. He looked at me, he looked at others and said, hey, Joey, I want to encourage you and I'm being honest with you. I see something in you. I think you can do anything you want to do in life. It's up to you. And we'll go and we'll hang out for 2 or 3 hours at the Braves game, and we sit there and we talk about baseball, but we also talk about life. What's going on with you? How's everything going? He continues to set that bar high for me. He continues to challenge me to be a better person in life. You have those people in your life. I don't know who they are. I'm thankful that you have them. I'm thankful that I've had them. But on the opposite side, we've had those 30 or 40 who told us, hey, I don't even know what you're doing here. You're wasting my time as a teacher. I don't even know why the school system bothers to talk to people and educate people like you. I don't know how much of that you've listened to. I don't know how much you carry through life. I don't know how much of the negativity, the junk, is in your head every day. But I do want to say this to you. Whatever you've heard, whatever you've seen in the past, can be overcome. And you can do whatever it is that God has gifted you to do here in this life. Amen? I believe that with all my heart. I believe that you can make a difference in the lives of others. Not just 1 or 2 people, but I believe that you can make the difference in the lives of hundreds of other people. But it's all up to you. So, here's my question. What is your plan? How do you plan to make a difference in the lives of those hundreds of people that come through your circle of influence every year? I want us to talk today about giving life through life groups. And I really hope that you'll pay attention to what we're saying and really pay attention to what we're looking at today, because I think this is a very important part of our life. What we're looking at today is relaunching our life groups. Since we started back in June, as a congregation, we've doubled in size. Can we get an amen for that? Amen. And I'm really thankful for that and really excited about that. But since we have doubled in size, that means we also have a greater need for more life groups. We started out with about 5, and now we're going to go to 8 or 10, however many we need to make sure that everybody's being able to be in a group where they're able to grow and share the things that are going on in their lives every day. So therefore, we need these life groups. Why should I be in a life group, you may ask? Well, I'm going to give you 3 reasons real quick. First of all, because they're biblical. You look all throughout the book of Acts and you see the early church meeting in homes in small groups. Second thing, the reason you should be in a life group is because it's part of the threefold plan for the church at Rome. We want to encourage everybody to be here on Sundays and celebrate and worship when we come together. We want to encourage everybody to be involved in a life group, and we want to encourage everybody to be involved in some area of service. The third thing is, the reason we should be involved in a life group is because it's one of the greatest opportunities that we have to grow, and it's one of the greatest opportunities we have to influence others and help them to be able to grow. But see, it's not about just being in a life group. It's, oh yeah, I checked off the 3. That's what I do. That's what everybody has been prodding me to do. That's what Joey's talked about it over and over and over again. So I checked off the big 3. I'm in a life group. That's not what it's about. It's about using the life group as a tool to help disciple others. Getting yourself where you need to be, and then bringing others in and helping them to become what God has gifted them to become. Now, I want you to think on this for just a moment, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to get down just to the foundation of what we are supposed to be doing as those who live for Jesus. What is our purpose in life? Well, our purpose is to live out the Great Commission, which is to do what? Go into the world and make disciples of those who are around us every day. Now, I want you to think on that for just a moment. How much of your life have you spent in the church, in Christ, not doing that? Because of the greater things that I guess have been put out there as expectations for you. Make sure you're at church 3 times a week. Make sure you take the Lord's Supper. Make sure you do this. Make sure you do that. But the great call that Jesus gave to us as he was about to ascend to go back and be where the Father was, I want you to take your life and I want you to be able to live in a way where you can look at others and say, come after me. Follow me. See, I think the intimidating part of this is you go back to what Paul says, and he says, imitate me as I imitate Christ, right? I think the scary part for us is, if I tell you to follow me, then guess what I've got to have together? I've got to have my stuff together. Now, does that mean I have to be perfect? Does that mean I'm not going to slip up ever? Does that mean I'm not going to say something that I shouldn't have some at? No, it doesn't. And people who are around you every day understand whether or not you are truly living for God. They see your heart. They know when you make a mistake that you try to do something about that. I'm not talking about living a perfect life, but what I am talking about is the majority of things that we do, the majority of ways that we act, line up with Jesus Christ. Therefore, I'm confident in looking at others and saying, follow me. So that's what I'm to be about every day. It's not just because this is what this church thinks. This is because what Jesus Christ told us. Our purpose is to go out and to make disciples. But then you bring it to the church at Rome. What's our mission statement here? Well, this is it. Be like Jesus and lead others to be like Jesus. So leading others into a relationship with Jesus and helping them to become like he was and is what we're trying to do as a church. It's what we're all about. So I want to encourage you to take these life groups and use them as your opportunity to influence others. But let's go back for a minute. What is your plan? We always have a plan. But have you ever thought about how you're going to get someone from here to there? Well, if you don't have a plan, can I give you one this morning? Can I give you something to think about? This is my idea that I want to put before you. I want to encourage you to get into a group and to commit to that same group for about 12 to 18 months. And then say at the end of this 12 to 18 month period of time, we all understand as a group that we are going to create another group from the group that we have here. And what I want you to do is every 12 to 18 months go through that process. of saying, okay, I'm going to get here, I'm going to get close to these people, then we're going to take this group of 20 people, divide them into 10, and we're going to multiply every year to year and a half. Now this is what I want you to think about. A group of 10 that doubles every 18 months will reach 1,000 people for God in 10 years. Man, that's powerful stuff. See, we got to be open to this, folks, because what happens a lot of times is we get in our group and we say, well, it's going to become our club. It's going to become our social club. I'm really comfortable with this group of people and I don't want to leave them. Well, guess what? Jesus Christ didn't call me to be comfortable. He didn't call me to the country club life. He called me to go out and do what I can to use my life to influence other people. And that's what I want to encourage us to think about. Get out of the mentality of just going and getting what I want and get into the mentality of saying, okay, I'm going to bring this friend, I'm going to bring this neighbor, I'm going to bring this cousin, and I'm going to do what I can through this group to get them connected and get them into Jesus. The deal is, there are some people in your life right now who will not step foot in this building or the other buildings that we meet in. But they will come to your house for dinner. They will go out and hang out and play putt-putt golf or go over to the park and have a barbecue. And those are great ways of bringing people into that circle because then they get here and they see these friends you've been talking about and they say, well, these people aren't nearly as weird as I thought they were. And then they give it a chance because you were smart about the way that you did it. Okay, Joey, I understand. You're selling me on it now. I need to do this. And obviously the numbers speak for themselves. But what about me? You know, how can I do this? Because that's where I'm kind of not getting it. I don't know what I need to do here. I don't know how I need to do this. I buy your concept, but I'm not the most outgoing guy. I'm kind of introverted. I'm not the person who's just going to go into a room and talk to everybody about everything. How can I be that person that you say I can be? How can I interact with hundreds and hundreds of people over the next 10 years and have an influence with them? Well, I'm glad you asked that question because those are what we're going to try to answer for the rest of our time together today. I want to read a true story to you, and then I want to apply the principles rather from this story with some of the things that Paul wrote to us to give us an answer. Now, this story that I'm about to read to you is about 2 weeks old. And when I read it the other day, Ryan and I have been talking, and Ryan and Johnny are in charge of our life groups, and he said, man, we need to do a kind of a relaunch because we got a lot of folks who aren't in groups right now. So it's weird how, you know, God will bring things to you sometimes. And I just within a couple of days, I read this story, and I said, man, this is what I'm going with. So I'm just going to be straight with you. I mean, the majority of this lesson today was inspired from a newspaper article that I wrote. That I said, man, this thing will, or not that I wrote, but I read. But I said, man, this thing right here will preach. Now I want you to listen to this. This is amazing. Colby Rasmus played baseball for the St. Louis Cardinals from 2009 until 2011 when he was traded to the Toronto Blue Jays. Rasmus's tenure with the Cardinals was rocky, partly due to the fact that he never played up to the expectations people had for him, and partly because he and the manager, Tony La Russa, were never on the same page. The Houston Astros, Rasmus's new team, faced the Cardinals in a spring training game 2 weeks ago, just like I said, which led to this article in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Rasmus says he's at peace now because he found Jesus Christ last year. I was lost for a while. I can remember my former teammate Lance Berkman sitting next to me on the bench talking about Jesus, and I really didn't understand it. At the time, my family hadn't really bought into that. Looking back, I saw Albert Pujols, I saw Lance Berkman, I saw Matt Holliday and Adam Wainwright, and I saw this aura, this presence they had about them. I always wondered how they got that. Now I see what it's about, and it's changed my life big time. I focus on my family, and I don't get caught up in all the stuff I used to. My time in St. Louis, the fans were always good to me, and it tore me up a little bit when I didn't play well, so I went through some rough times. Surrendering my life to the Lord helped me relieve those demons, so to speak. Now, I want us to go through this, and I want us to think about this, because the bottom line is we're talking about a baseball player. We're talking about someone who is high profile, and a lot of people may have talked about him, but every one of us is on a team of some sort. You know, we go to school, we go to our social events, and we've got people who are around us every day. And these principles that apply in Colby Rasmus's conversion to Jesus apply to us in a great way. So 4 ways to give life through life groups. First one is this: friendship matters. Now you go back to this story, and you talk about him coming to faith, and he mentioned by name 4 guys who were on his team who talked about Jesus, who reached out to him. They sat on the bench next to him every day. They were in the plane traveling from town to town, influencing him in ways that they could. And what I want you to think about this morning is one of the greatest ways, maybe even the first step, maybe the greatest way that we can reach out to someone and start to talk to them about Jesus is by being a friend of them. Now you go to the scriptures here, and you see what Paul said to Timothy. In 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 11, it says, "But you, Timothy, are a man of God. So run from all these evil things. Pursue righteousness and a godly life, along with faith, love, perseverance, and gentleness. Fight the good fight for the true faith. Hold tightly to the eternal life to which God has called you, which you have declared so well before many witnesses." Now look at that first part, that first line there. "But you, Timothy, are a man of God." Now think about Paul saying that to you. Think about him looking down at you as a younger man and saying, "Hey, you're a man of God. You got it going. You got it together." Now think about you going out to others and them not necessarily being followers of Jesus, but them having some wonderful characteristics. I baptized this guy about 10 years ago, and he was a wonderful person. One of the best people that I've ever known. And he had been in church for 20 or 30 years, sitting with his wife, and just had not been converted. Just had wonderful family life, great father, great grandfather. And his thing was, he couldn't do it perfectly. And I said, "Well, bro," I'm going to be honest with you. You're never going to be able to do it perfectly. I said, "Can I tell you something? Can I tell you something just as a person who's observed you for the last 10 years? He said, "Sure." I said, "You're one of the best people that I know." I said, "When somebody dies, you're at the funeral home." I said, "We need something done here at the church, you come up and you do it." I said, "You're more involved than some of our members." I said, you've got more Christ in you than some of the Christians that I know who've been supposedly following him for 20 or 30 years. And he became a Christian, and now he's a deacon, and man, he's a wonderful individual. But the deal is, he had so many of those things in him before he actually made his decision to follow Jesus. And that's what I'm saying to you. Who can you coach? Who can you look out to and say, "Yeah, but you need to take this aspect of your life and you need to turn it into a ministry where you influence other people for Jesus"? See, the thing is that some people need is they need a boost. They need that confidence to know that what they have to offer is something that the kingdom needs. And you can provide that for them by giving them a few words of encouragement, by being a friend to them. Because, folks, friendship matters. And it happens when we walk across a room. On Sundays, you see somebody here, you don't know them, you walk across the room and you shake their hand. You're at life group, you see somebody new and you don't know them, and all of a sudden, boom, you shake their hand. And you get to know that person. And it's crazy how this can happen. Because you took a chance, because you're looking at them and they're looking at you and you don't know what's going on. You assess the situation. What if they don't like me? What if they think I'm kind of boring? What if I can't think of something to say? We go through all these scenarios that Satan puts in our head and our mind. But what if they do react well to you? What if that does become a good friend to you? I can remember the night at our house when we were meeting in a life group about 4 or 5 years ago, when Jason Bell and I started talking about music. He knew my music. I knew his music. We talked about Jamie Johnson. We talked about Chris Knight. And boom, that was kind of the foundation. And now here it is 4 or 5 years later, and Jason Bell's one of my best friends. And I'll be honest with you, I needed some good friends. And he filled that role for me. Somebody out there needs you to be a good friend to them. So take a walk. Extend a hand. Learn a little about another. Gain a friend. Help the borders of the kingdom expand by converting that person to Jesus. Second thing I want us to look at. Teammates, not ministers. Those in this story that we read who pointed Colby Erasmus to Jesus Christ were his teammates, not a minister. Now what I want you to think about is you have opportunities to influence people every day at your work and at school. People that you can influence that I can never influence. Why? Because they don't trust me. I'm not in their circle of trust. See, God has put you in a place. God has put you in an office. He's put you in a neighborhood. He's put you in a situation where you're coaching a team, where you're interacting with others. And the whole idea is He's put you in that place so that you can be His influence for good. Do you see life that way? Think on it just for a moment. How are you walking through life every day? You're just walking through life saying, well, this is good. I'm going through the routine. This is what happens. I get up, I brush my teeth, I have my snack in the morning, I drink some coffee, I drive, I get to the office. Is that the way you see life? I think for me it was for a long time. And now I'm starting more and more every day to say, okay, God, what have you got for me today? I mean, it's weird to me when we open our eyes to situations and all of a sudden, boom, there's the ministry opportunity. This is crazy. And I'm telling you the honest truth. 2 Saturdays in a row, I've seen people at the same place that I've been praying about. And I just got up and just so happened to be there, and boom, there was that person. And guess what it gave me an opportunity to do? Talk to them a little bit. How's everything going? Man, we hope you can get back in church soon. Boom. And the deal is, He created everything. God, you look at your body, you look at who you are, you look at your personality, you look at your quirks, the good things about you. He created all this stuff. He put it in us. You think about the things that He was able to set into motion. The world, water, trees, animals. You don't think He can't bring somebody in the same convenience store where you're going to be? But are we asking for that opportunity? Are we seeing ourselves going into life every day and that being our mission field? Because if we'll see all of life as our mission field, then we'll start to see, hey, I saw so-and-so today at Kmart. And dude, that would be something big because nobody goes to Kmart, right? But you saw them there. And all of a sudden you're thinking, hey, this is not just a chance. God brought that person there today so I could use that opportunity to influence them a little bit. So listen to what Paul says here to the Colossian church. Colossians 1 verse 4, for we have heard of your faith in Christ Jesus and your love for all of God's people. And as you continue to read the book of Colossians, what do we see happening? We see that people there are reaching out to others for Jesus. And they're doing that through a love that flows through the members there. One disciple making another. And that's what I want to encourage us to do. Go out, do what we can to encourage people through the church at Rome, through our life groups. Third thing this morning, like and unlike. There's a Christian author named Timothy Keller, and he's written a bunch of good stuff, very thought-provoking man, just a very, very smart individual. And this is one of the things he says. He points out that Christians need to be like and unlike people who don't follow Christ. And I think that's wise, very wise. You think about Rasmus here. He had these teammates They went through the same things he went through, same temptations, the same struggle. They went through the same daily routines of work, maintained the same lifestyle. Our friends should look at us and say, you know what? I've observed him. I've observed her. And you can be a Christian and be normal and have a family and be successful at work. You can have fun. They should be able to say that by looking at us and observing how we live our lives. On the other hand, Rasmus looked at his teammates and said, although they're the same as me, they're also different. He looked at them and he saw that they maintained certain areas, integrity. They were people of grace. They were cheerful. They were people who lifted others up. So others should be able to look at us and say, he's very much like me, but he's also very much unlike me. Think about Paul here in this aspect. He was like people and that he had a regular job. Acts 18 verse 3 says, Paul lived and worked with them, for they were tent makers just as he was. He goes out and makes tents. All right, so there are a lot of other people who made tents. He had an opportunity to influence them. All right, we'll look on the other side of this. He's very unlike people he was around in many ways because he was very adaptable. Beginning in verse 19 of 1 Corinthians 9, even though I am a free man with no master, I have become a slave to all people to bring many to Christ. When I was with the Jews, I lived like a Jew to bring the Jews to Christ. When I was with those who followed the Jewish law, I lived under that law. Even though I'm not subject to the law, I did this so I could bring to Christ those who are under the law. When I am with the Gentiles who do not follow the Jewish law, I live apart from that law so I can bring them to Christ. But I do not ignore the law of God, I obey the law of Christ. When I am with those who are weak, I share their weakness, for I want to bring the weak to Christ. Yes, I try to find common ground with everyone, doing everything I can to save some. Now, how many of us are adaptable? You see what I'm saying there? He was a tent maker, which was like the people that he was around. But then they looked to him and say, well, he's very much unlike us because no matter who he finds himself around, he tries to do what he can to adapt himself to that group. Final point this morning, talk about Jesus. Rasmus said that as he sat on the bench, especially with Lance Bergman, that Bergman talked a lot about Jesus. Now, he didn't get into those specific conversations. I don't know what he said, what he talked about, but I do know this. It's easy to have a conversation about God. Folks, I think we make this hard. We just haven't trained ourselves to do this. I mean, what do we talk about? I mean, so many different things. Man, we stayed out front this morning. What do we say? Oh, man, it's freezing. Well, 75 2 days ago, now I'm back in my winter stuff. What are you talking about right now? I got 2 weeks before the Braves start. How do you think they're going to do? I mean, we go through these routines, right? Well, the fact of the matter is, we've got to train ourselves to talk about God. It's so easy to work Jesus into our everyday conversations. If he's the Lord of my life, if he's the person that I'm living for, then that subject ought to be on my tongue a lot. I want to tell you a story that applies here in a great way. I don't know how many of you have Dr. Paul Walker as your doctor, but he's my ENT doctor, and this is a phenomenal individual. He's one of those guys that, I went into him a couple times, and, they look at your chart, and they say, he's a minister. So I went in, he started talking about things, he had these charts up on the wall, and, all right, well, God made us to do this, and, God made this way, and for a minute I thought, well, maybe he's just playing that game. I'm a minister, and he's playing the God game with me. Like this guy one time asked me, he said, well, what do you think about the new Pope? And I was like, well, I guess he's okay. Yeah. Doesn't affect us one way or the other, just trying to make conversation. But I thought that might be the deal. And then as I go more and more, I start talking to these people that work there every day, and they're like, I guess you had some conversation with Dr. Walker. Yeah, well, he's the real deal. You see these people who are working with him every day and see him in tough situations and see him day in and day out. And if that's the opinion that those people have of him, that's who he is. So 2 weeks ago, tomorrow, I went in to get these tubes put into my ear. which have helped in absolutely no way whatsoever. But I went in, and he's talking to me, and he looks at this sign, and he looks at this sign, and he says, man, he said, this is straight on in. He said, but here you got a little bit of just the way you were made, it's a little bit of crook in the ear, and it's going to be kind of a difficult deal. So he goes here first, does this one, then he comes back to this one. And he gets in there, and he's gets a little frustrated. You can just tell. And you know what he says right there? God, show me how to do this. Right there doing his thing. In the middle of his work. Working on a patient who was alive, hearing, seeing what was going on. He didn't know exactly how he was going to do it. And he turned to God. And man, I thought that was amazing. I was really glad at that point that he was working on me. God has helped me see a lot of things. I'll pray about that. Yeah, our life group was talking about that the other night. There's so many ways that we can work God and Jesus into our lives, but we got to raise the dialogue. We can't be just comfortable talking about the Braves and the weather and everything that's going on. Let's work him in there and see what kind of difference it makes in the lives of others. Think about Paul. This is how he introduced himself in Romans chapter 1. This letter is from Paul, a slave of Jesus Christ, chosen by God to be an apostle and sent out to preach the good news. A slave of Jesus Christ. That's what I want you to know about me. That's who I am. That's how he started the letter off. And what did he do from day to day? Well, look at Acts chapter 18. And after Silas and Timothy came down from Macedonia, Paul spent all his time preaching the word. He testified to the Jews that Jesus was the Messiah. He went out and talked to other people about Jesus. And folks, that's what we've got to do. God has said this to us. I want to take your life and I want you to spend that life influencing others for me. And then we go out and we try it, right? And we get discouraged because the first person or the first two people we talk to don't have a positive response. They don't all of a sudden say, hey, yeah, dunk me, put me in the water. I want to be baptized today. Or maybe it's the first 8 or 10 people, and we try and we talk to these people, and we have an influence on them, and they don't come to the Lord, and boom, we're out of the game because at least we tried. But you go back and you look at people like Noah who preached and preached and preached, and there were 8 people who got on that boat. Think about how much of a success rate he had. Think about people coming in, Jesus Christ, God in the flesh, and he says what? That I can't even, there's people I'm not going to be able to reach. All he does is ask us to go out every day and live our lives as an influence for him. And you go back to our friend Paul, and there's some advice that he gives us that I want us to think about. And this is what he says in 1 Corinthians 3 verse 6. I planted the seed in your hearts, Apollos watered, but it was God who made it grow. See, it's our job to go and plant. It's our job to go and water. And it's up to God to give the increase. But what I'm wanting you to think about today is your job in all of this. What he's asking you to do. Use this group and allow it to be a mechanism of influence on others' lives. Now I want to go back to Kobe Rasmus for just a moment. If you remember, as I was reading that story just a moment ago, it said that he played for the Cardinals from 2009 to 2011. And then it said, just a few moments later, I came to the Lord last year. You remember that? Last year was what? 2014. 3 years went by. He was in a different town, a different location. Didn't see those guys anymore. But the influence that they had on him was in his heart. It was in his mind. It kept tugging on him for a period of time. And then 3 years later, he became a follower of Jesus. We are to plant. We are to water. It's up to God to give the increase. So this is what I want you to think about for just a moment. I'm asking you to commit to a plan 12 months to 18 months and going and being a part of that group so that God can make you and mold you into who you need to be. And then you can reach out and bring another friend. And you do that every 12 to 18 months. And then over 10 years, you have influenced 1,000 people. You have influenced 1,000 people. Not the preacher, not the shepherds, not the ministry leaders here. You have influenced 1,000 people. "2025 is going to be here before we know it. 10 years is going to pass by in a hurry. And we're going to be in 2025 doing one of two things. Thinking that one day I'm going to come up with a plan on how I'm going to use my life to influence other people. Or in 2025, I can look around at the 1,000 people that I have influenced because I made a decision on a Sunday in March of 2015. Are you going to allow God to use you to influence others for the kingdom? Think about all the good that will be done when we answer yes to that question. Have any need whatsoever, please come. Always stand and sing.